So welcome everybody. Thank you all for coming virtually. This meeting is being recorded and will be provided for you all to see again later. Keep it clean, folks. All right, Jean Marie, keep it clean. My name is Brent McCarty. I am a conservation educator for the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. And today we are doing the third in our webinar series for Field to Fork. And today's topic is field scouting for deer. So if you continue to watch the webinar series, later down the road, we'll have an e-scouting for deer as well, which will talk about how to utilize technology to scout. But today is e-scouting for deer. And today's host, or today's presenter, is this very cool lady I've known for, 12 years now, I guess.
Really? Wow.
12. Yeah, 2008. Jean Marie Suggs is a volunteer hunter ed instructor. You've got some other certifications with things like NRA and stuff too, correct?
Correct.
Yes, and we were just establishing, so I would get it right, she has been involved with the Kentucky Becoming an Outdoors Woman program for 24 years now. 1 year as a participant and then 23 years pretty much as an instructor. And I know that's part of your presentation as well, Jean Marie, so I won't go too much more.
All right.
But anyway, without too much further ado, I am going to mute everybody before she gets started. Looks like most people are muted. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jean Marie. Oh, hang on. No, that's not what I'm going to do yet. First, I'm going to tell you, if you've got questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Please, everybody, do me a favor. Put your name and where you're from in the chat now. I'm going to attempt to take attendance after this is all over. And so if you all can do that and put it in the chat, I would appreciate it. I'm also going to go ahead and take a picture of who all's here. So that'll help me with that later as well. After this is all over, you are going to get a survey in your email asking how we did and what we can do better, like who would be a better presenter than Jean Marie, that sort of thing. That's what we're going to find out, and it will be very helpful to know who all was here. I will attempt to make sure I don't miss anybody when I send that survey out. So now I'm going to mute everybody, and Jean Marie, you can unmute yourself and take it away as soon as I remember how to do that. Dispense mute all.
All right. Thank you very much. And everyone, thank you very much for joining in tonight and zooming in. As Brent said, my name is Jean Marie Suggs, and most people abbreviate that to JM. And I really appreciate Fish and Wildlife inviting me to present this evening. I have presented a number of different workshops in the Becoming an Outdoors Woman program and enjoyed it thoroughly. Have been looking forward to this. This actually is a program that I presented in Bow, Becoming an Outdoors Woman, earlier this year. The great thing about doing this again is I've been able to get back out into the field, update some of the photos, and update some of the information that I'll be presenting to you tonight. So thank you for zooming in. Couple things about Fish and Wildlife. I don't work for Fish and Wildlife. I do like to give them a good plug every so often because I believe so very strongly in their mission. And part of that is they've got not just these workshops, but also the excellent educational material available to hunters, anglers, outdoors enthusiasts. And so check out the website, check out the programs they've got. The other thing about Fish and Wildlife that a lot of people don't know is that Fish and Wildlife gets no money from the general tax fund. The resources that they put together come from hunting, fishing, and boater licenses, as well as some federal grants and other monies, but none of this comes to us from the general state. So you are supporting these programs every time you buy a license. So please keep that up, encourage others to do so. I am going to be presenting tonight. I work in corporate America, so we communicate via PowerPoint. And so I've got a PowerPoint presentation I'll be speaking from. We'll be presenting that. Where I live, I have fairly limited bandwidth, or internet, so I'm going to stop my video and my presentation. And if Brent, give me a thumbs up if you please presentation, I appreciate it. All right. So we are going to be talking about scouting for deer and how to figure out where to put a blind or a tree stand when you're going to be hunting. We'll talk about getting ready. We'll talk about different things to look for when you're scouting. We'll talk about tree stands and blinds and placement for those, and then a few last notes. We do have a whole lot to get through, but if you have questions, please send those to Brent and he'll jump in and we'll answer questions as best we can. As Brent said, my name is Jean Marie Suggs. I've been with Bo for over 20 years. I am a hunter safety instructor. I'm a range safety officer, a shotgun instructor, and I do have an allergy to the indoors. If I have the opportunity to go outside, then that's absolutely where you'll find me. No matter the weather, my kind don't really melt in water. I don't care what they say in The Wizard of Oz. If it's raining, I still go outside. The goal of our workshop today is to provide guidance to new hunters and new ideas to people who've been out in the field for a while on how to scout for deer and for other animals, and how to use that information to find good locations for tree stands and blinds. And if you think about it, the point I really want everybody to remember is that scouting is really just a hike with a specific purpose. Once you figure out what to look for and how to interpret the woods, every time you go out, you'll be scouting. You won't be able to help it. And like I say, it's a good day outside. It's kind of like kayak fishing. Even if you don't catch any fish, you got to go kayak. If you go out scouting, even if you don't see any signs of animals, at least you were out in the woods. So it's a good time to be outside. And figuring out how to read what's out there. In this workshop, we are going to focus on deer, but what you hear here, I present to you here, you will also be able to apply to other animal species that you might want to hunt. Turkey season starts on Saturday, so think about that as we go through this as well. There are photographs in here that are examples from late summer to early autumn, August through October. If you're observing from a phone or listening from a phone, I'll try to describe the photos if you don't see them. And you'll also hear me refer to in the woods or in the field. I use those terms generically. Both mean when you're outdoors, you don't actually have to be in the woods or in a field to see the things that I'm referring to. Any photos came on this presentation, unless otherwise noted, came from a hunting property in central Kentucky. And so these are Kentucky lands, these are Kentucky woods, these are Kentucky deer and other animals you'll see in the photos in this presentation. So let's get started. When you're going to go scout, the point is to enhance your success when you head out to harvest a deer. It should give you a good idea of where the animals tend to be, where they travel on a given property. In addition to that, there are other benefits to scouting. You want to become familiar with the property you're going to hunt before the day you go, if at all possible. You also, once you've decided where to put your tree stand or where to put your blind, you want to be familiar enough that you can get there in the dark, because typically when you start hunting, you're going to be walking to your hunting spot in the dark, and you want to make sure you know where you're headed. It gives you a chance to scout for other species. And like I say, enjoy a nice walk in the woods. Scouting doesn't just have to happen in the fall before modern gun or before deer season. Scouting can be a year-round activity. So if you're itching to get outside in the spring and the summer, great times to scout for deer or other animals when you're able to get out into the woods. So to get ready for scouting, there's a little bit of work you have to do ahead of time, just like any other activity you undertake. If you have internet access, take a look at a map online, Google Maps or a similar offering. Check and see what's going to be in the area that you're going to be hunting. Are you going to be near houses? Are there creeks on the property? Are there highways near the property? Make sure you understand the property boundaries. So if you are pursuing a deer, you have to find one that you've shot and it crosses off the property line. Who do you need to reach out to get approval to and permission to go onto someone else's property? Make sure you understand all of that before you go scouting. The other great idea about using a map is to understand how you're going to get to the property. It's surprisingly easy to get turned around. It's a dark 100, you're on a back road, you lose your GPS signal, you still want to understand how to get to where you're going. Try to take a copy of the map with you. I find drawing a map helps me remember it better. That's actually a trait among humans. Writing something down helps you remember what you've seen. Likewise, Fish and Wildlife has some terrific maps on their website of the wildlife management areas, or the WMAs, that are available around the Commonwealth. Those are downloadable. You can print those. They are very light, unlike a Google map that shows the trees, so you can write on it and make notes as you go. Likewise, when you get your hunting or fishing license, you have the opportunity to sign up for the Kentucky Afield magazine. In every edition, they have a highlight of a wildlife management area. And these also make a great resource if you're going to a particular WMA. Look through your Kentucky Afield, you might see that you've got some information on that. Getting ready to go out, you want to be prepared for the weather. Nobody says the weather has to be perfect to go out and scout for animals. And by the way, it doesn't have to be perfect when you're hunting either, but do be prepared for whatever the weather is going to be. Take a rain jacket just in case. Take a dry pair of shoes for once you get back to the car, and also be prepared to meet Mother Nature on her terms. Take some bug spray, have a spider stick, typically August through the first frost. Any trail you hike down is going to have spider webs across it and spiders in the middle of them. So if you take a stick with you, you can spin it around and knock down a few spider webs rather than catching a spider in the face. Chiggers are prevalent in this region during late summer and early autumn. Those are little mites that chew on you. And ticks are always an issue. I recommend permethrin for keeping ticks off, but it does take some preparation and it is not safe for cats. Please, please always read the instructions before you use it. Some good outdoor shoes for hiking around, and I very strongly recommend they be waterproof, because if you go in the morning, chances are the grasses are going to be damp, the woods will be damp, your shoes are going to get wet. So always be prepared for that. Take a few things with you. So you've got your map hand drawn so you can remember what you want to see. Take something to write with. Don't forget the pen or pencil. Take a cell phone or a camera. Very few people go anywhere without a cell phone these days, but having your cell phone with you allows you to take photos of anything really cool that you see while you're outside. It also lets you see what kind of cell coverage you'll have in different areas of a property while you're hunting. So the property we used for this particular workshop, there's great cell phone service if you've got one carrier. If you've got other carriers, it might be spotty, maybe in the parking area or up at the top of the hill. Reflective tacks are something that's very handy to have with you, particularly as you're putting up a tree stand or a blind. These are very small. You can stick them into a tree, and if you hit them with a flashlight, when it's dark, they light up like road signs. And so it's a good way to make sure you know how to get to your blind or your tree stand in the dark. Take some walking sticks if you need walking sticks. I always take a trash bag. If I find a piece of trash, I like to pick it up and take it with me. Try to leave the world a better place than I found it. Something else to keep in mind, just a little important note, is if you go scouting in the spring and the summer and the early fall, the world looks different when there are no leaves on the trees. And that's one great opportunity if you do go scout in multiple seasons, is to see what the land looks like. If you make yourself a note that the tree with the funny leaves or the red leaves in October and in November. So you've done your prep, you've got your map, you've checked out what's around the property. You figured out how to get there, and you're ready to go scouting. So once you got to the property, think about what deer need. They only need about 4 things. They need something to eat, they need forage, they need cover to feel safe, they need water, and they need to make baby deer. If a deer has 4 things, it's happy. So as you're on a property, look around the property and think, what would a deer find here? And keep in mind that deer are edge dwellers. They spend their time between open fields for feeding and bedding down in warmer weather, and for the safety of woods. They may have a place to forage and then look for a quick place to duck into cover if they feel like they've got a threat nearby. I have a picture on this page, and if you look at this photo, you can see a couple deer trails where they have trampled down the grass walking through this field. You can see the trails they've made, and there's cover nearby in case they need to make a quick dash to safety. So think about what a deer will need as you're walking around. If you were a deer, what is it you'd be interested in? And deer tracks obviously are the most obvious way to look for deer. Deer have a split hoof with 2 dew claws. If the deer is relaxed and walking casually, the 2 parts of the hoof are typically together. And the photo on the left here, you can see what looks like an upside down heart shape. That's a deer that's been walking very casually. The photo in the center is a deer that has been pushed to run. And you can see the hoof has split. That gives better traction, stability, balance. And you can see the dew claws digging in, those 2 dots behind the rabbit ears. So you've got an upside down heart, you've got some bunny ears. That's what your deer prints are going to look like. The photo on the right was taken obviously in the mud. And when this photo was taken, there was still water trickling in. So this deer was not in a huge hurry, but you can see that we like to think they're nice and light and graceful, but they dig into the dirt quite a bit when they're moving around. So where to walk when you go scouting? If you're on a new property, start with any human trails that are there. Deer are kind of lazy, and if there's a trail that's already there, they'll use it. So look for deer tracks on any human trails. At first, a deer track might look like a smudge in the dirt, but it's one of those things that once you've seen them, once you've learned what they look like, they do become very apparent. Look for telltale signs. Animals are moving down the trails, but take your time when you're walking and watch the sides of the trails, because you'll be able to see where the deer actually cut off from a human trail and make their own. If you're planning on hunting a wildlife management area, those are mowed, I think, still by volunteers, usually in the August-September timeframe. If you go in late summer, you can actually see where the deer have been walking on the wildlife management trails because the grass has grown up, and you can see where they've been walking through the grasses. You can find their tracks in the mud. The photo on the left in this particular screen has a deer has slipped. We like to think they're these graceful animals with great traction. No, they slip and slide like the rest of us. And the photo on the right inside the circle, you'll see that upside down heart from the deer track. And this is just zoomed in a little bit on the next page so you can see those a little bit better. So to track a deer's path, as you go scouting, like I said, look for the deer tracks. You'll likely find some on a human trail, but the deer are going to cut off of a human trail. And so if you take your time and you watch to the left and the right, you'll see where they break off to go up and down it or down a hill. So slow down, take your time. This isn't a race. This is a marathon. A marathon's a race. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. But as you go hiking, look for where the deer will cut off, because they're very consistent in where they walk. And that's how these trails get worn down by the animals. On the next page, I've got a couple of images. One, you can see the trail. It's the image on the right. And on the left, you can actually see the slide marks where their hooves slip in the mud on the edge of the hill. If you find these types of cutoffs, if you can do so safely, track it for a while. You may even find bits of fur. You may find prints. You may find signs of browse, and I'll talk about those in just a little bit. But this kind of extra work, if you go bushwhacking, it really pays off to see where the deer go, what they're attracted to, what they avoid. So on this next page, on the right, we've got the deer trail. And on the left, inside the circle, you can see some slip marks where they've been sliding as they go up that hill. And I'm going to, on the next page, zoom in a little bit more. Here's one of the slide marks on the left and really zoomed in on the right. So take your time as you walk the human trails on any property.
Jean Marie, I'm getting kind of a, there we go. I'm getting kind of a delay. Lisa Fry, I can still see your face. Are you getting the same delay or is yours working? Little delay. Little delay.
Good information. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. So when I say I'm moving to a picture, when it comes up, will you give me a thumbs up?
When it comes up, I'll give you the thumbs up.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Okay, so I've got two new pictures, should be showing up on your screen, and these are zoomed in to show a couple of deer trails. If you take a look at these, the one on the right is a little bit more obvious, going through the woods here. And the one on the left, you can see where they've worn down the undergrowth as they've walked through. So those are the kinds of things you want to be looking for as you're headed down a human trail, those cutoffs, somewhere that a trail might curve, that a human walks. A deer probably goes straight and goes through the woods. So those are some good spots to look for as you're hiking. So the next thing we're going to talk about after deer get through hiking all day and walking around are bedding areas. And deer tend to be a little bit more active in the morning. Like I say, they're edge dwellers on the edge of day and night. They're active in the morning and the evening, in the overnight. During midday, they tend to bed down to nap or to process their food. They have multiple stomachs, so they chew a cud like a cow does. And in the screen, images on this screen, you can see some areas where deer have bedded down and they've actually matted down the grass. In warmer months, they tend to bed down in open field areas. In the cooler months, they're likely to be in cedar forests because this traps in heat and warmth for them. So in these photos, which were obviously taken in summer, you can see some bedding areas and the arrows point to a quick spot that a deer could dash off to for safety. So if you're looking at one of these areas, look for tufts of fur. Deer tend to be very red fur in the summer and in warmer months, and they tend to turn gray just like everything else, gray and brown in the autumn. So look for fur in those colors. Chances are you'll see some tufts if you find a bedding area. As we move on to the next page, the other thing to keep in mind is to watch for details. So as you're hiking around, this photo was actually taken by a friend of mine when she was hiking at Raven Run. And you can see that this is a fence line, and I've got in these yellow circles little tufts of fur that the deer have left. And if you find something like this, where deer have either gone over or under a fence, look for a landing spot on the other side of the fence, and you can see where their hooves tend to land, and they're going to wear it down. Excuse me. So you can see a landing area. If you see a downed tree along a trail, look for the same type thing on the other side of the tree. You'll see where they've jumped the tree, and you'll find a landing spot where you find a lot of hoof prints. And if it's a tall tree or something, you may find fur on it as well. So as deer are moving along, watch for the details and start looking for signs of browsing. These photos are taken at night, and it's always a little creepy to see these photos because they're infrared or they've got a flash on. But this is a great example of what it looks like when a deer has been browsing. In this top image, you can see a little bit of a shrub here, maybe a sapling oak. And sure enough, here she comes and she's browsing away. And when she's done, the leaves are gone. So you can see what happens to that one little sapling as a deer browses. Once a deer has chewed on these leaves and nibbled them off, the tips of the plant are going to die a little bit. So you might find half an inch to an inch of brown where the plant has died, where it's been chewed on. And that's a good sign that deer have been browsing through. And you'll see this in open fields. You'll see this in woods that have a lot of underbrush. It's a great way to see if deer have been in the area. If an area has been mowed, it may be a little hard to tell what's been mowed versus what's been browsed. But if the plants are 2 or 3 feet tall, chances are they've been browsed. If they're 2 or 3 inches tall, there may have been a mower through. So as you look for signs of browse, also keep in mind that what goes in comes out. So something else you may want to look for as you're hiking is deer sign. And deer sign is a nice term for what you find when a deer poops. No polite way to put that. The feces tend to be about a 1-inch pellet, and you'll find them usually in a small pile. The shinier they are, the more recent they are. If they're dull and gray, chances are they've been there for a while. But if you find a bedding area, if you find a trail that you think is a deer trail, look for these. These look very different from sign from a predator, because our predators will have fur and deers will not. You may see signs of berries in it, but probably not. They tend to process their food fairly efficiently. And I didn't zoom in on that photo too much. I apologize for that. Something else to look for as hunting season comes up are rubs. And rubs and scrapes are the two things that probably get hunters as excited as anything. As antlers grow on a buck, these antlers are covered in a soft material that we call velvet, and it provides nutrients to the rack. And racks on deer and elk are some of the most rapidly growing tissue, animal tissue on the planet, actually. As the antlers mature for the season, the bucks will rub them against trees to remove this velvet. I've heard people say that they do that because it itches. I don't know how you ask a buck if his antlers itch or not, but that's an old wives' tale I heard, or an old hunter's tale, I should say. But as the bucks rub these velvet off the trees, they leave very distinctive marks on the trees that they use for this. And deer are creatures of habit. They follow the same walking trails. They use the same trees to rub the velvet off their antlers. So this will leave a very distinctive mark. And you can, even if you find a rub, stand at a tree with a rub on it, look in the direction of the rub, you may very likely find the next tree that the buck uses. And the buck will actually give you his exact route that he travels, because you can follow from tree to see where the sky goes. Just try not to leave too much scent on the trail. Try not to spend too much time on it. You're a predator. If you leave predator scent, you may actually push the animal to change his route. Once or twice on a trail, once or twice at a rub is not going to make an animal change his route unless you do anything too disruptive. But do keep in mind that you're a predator and you're leaving predator scent anywhere you go. So the distinctive look of a rub is cedar trees are probably the best place to start as you're new to this. They like cedar trees, and rubs on cedar trees are very easy to spot. The trees won't be too big because the buck has to get his antlers around them. And you can see strips of bark that are hanging and loose. You will see the bark literally rubbed off and gone. And so these two trees that you see in this current photo are from the same trail of a buck that is on the property that we use for this workshop. So if you take a look, you can see where they've removed the strips of bark from the cedar trees. You'll also find that these are very consistent height off the ground if they're being used by the same buck. And As the season progresses, these rubs will become more and more obvious on the trees. And you also want to make sure that what you're looking at is a rub. There are some things that you might see that look a lot like rubs but aren't. If you get it wrong, that's okay. You're still looking for the right things. If you're new at this, you're going to make mistakes. And as long as you're being safe, those are all forgivable. If you look at a tree and you think it's a rub and it's not, you're still looking for the right things. Cedar trees, which are a great place to start looking for rubs, do lose strips of bark naturally without the help of a deer. These can easily be confused with a true rub, but there are a couple dead giveaways. Look how far up what you think is a rub goes. Deer only get so tall. If you're looking at something 12 and 14 feet up a tree, that's probably not a rub. If it goes all the way down to the ground, a buck is only going to drop his head so low. It's probably not a rub. If there are branches in the way of where the buck's antlers would need to go to rub the tree, probably not a rub. Is it so big that no buck could actually get his rack around it? That if that tree's too big, it may not be a rub. So just some things to keep in mind. And again, like I said, if you get it wrong, don't worry about it. You're still looking for the right things. So that's a quick overview of rubs. Excuse me. The next thing that get hunters really excited during hunting season are called scrapes. And scrapes are made by bucks as a calling card to let everybody know they're in the area. These are easy to spot typically, especially later in the season. They are a low-hanging branch that a buck will leave his scent on, and directly below it, he'll dig into the ground with his hooves, and then he's going to pee on it to leave his scent. And this is part of his territory as he patrols. He lets the does know he's here. He lets the other bucks know he's here. And so it's a great way to know if there are bucks in the area. If you find a scrape in the woods, this is something I would again ask you to take care not to step on it, give it a wide berth if possible, so that you don't disrupt a deer's activity because you're adding a predator scent to the location. And again, once or twice, not going to be too disruptive, but you don't want to step on it too much or for too long. So the page coming up has a picture of a scrape that probably started in August. This photo was taken in August, and it's just below a low-hanging branch. Fairly sure this is a start of a scrape because they use this spot every year. This one is very consistent, and so on this property, we know that this is going to be a spot. As more and more bucks come through, as autumn progresses and as you get closer to the rut, these things will grow to be about 3 feet by 3 feet. They can get very, very large. If you have had rain or moisture in the area, you'll even be able to see hoof prints below the low-hanging branch, and you might even have a musky scent from the urine where the deer have urinated on the spot. So we've got a couple of photos taken in October. Brent, are those showing on your screen? Great, thank you. So if you notice over on the left, we've got where they've been stomping and scraping here. Here's the low-hanging branch. And under this cedar, this one's gotten very large over the course of autumn. And here's the low-hanging branch. So something that's not exactly scouting, but people do use, is helping the deer decide where they want to be. And you'll hear people talk about hunting over corn on private land or over a trophy or a mineral rock. If you decide to do this, that's up to you. If you're hunting on public land, please be sure you understand specific laws regarding the use of these are outlined in the Hunter Regs, which you can get free at most any sporting goods shop, or Fish and Wildlife has available online.
I'll share the link to that, Jean Marie.
Thank you. The images on this next page are from a property right on the property line with the one we've used for this workshop. And the image on the right, if these have come up, you can see the trees. And the image on the left, you can see the trail that the deer are making to get to that location. If you were to set up near a spot like this, it's very likely you'd get a good shot at a deer. However, if you're right on a property line and right on top of another hunter, you may run into some issues if there is any sort of, maybe the other hunters are not as careful as you are. Maybe you shoot a deer and it crosses over to their property. You really don't want any sort of unnecessary altercation. So while you might have a great shot at an animal, please choose wisely if you see something like this right on a property line. A mineral lick is another way of helping animals decide where to be. This is very similar to what people give cows, a salt lick. And it's a mineral rock that attracts deer and provides a healthy boost for rack development and general well-being. As you can see in the spring, we had some mama deers bringing their babies here to get some additional nutrients. It does act as a deer attractant and actually other species as well. And even once the rock itself has been gone, the minerals have leached into the soil, so the animals will still come back and they'll still lick the soil. If you put a mineral rock out or a trophy rock, please expect that particular location to turn into a bog, because the animals will return to it time after time, long after the rock. And you can see that it helps with some pretty healthy antler growth as well, if that's why you're hunting, is you're looking for a rack. Another way to see where animals are, if you suspect there's an area with good animal activity, is to put out a trail camera. And all of the pictures on this page, when they come up, have been taken from a trail camera that is on one particular field. So all these different animals have come through. Trail cameras are not necessary for success, but they do give you a good way to see what's going on when humans aren't around. This type of equipment can be attached to a tree and it can be left for weeks. They're weatherproof. I do recommend, even on private property, locking it shut and cabling the trail camera to a tree. I like to think that everybody is honest and honorable, but unfortunately that's not the world we live in. But if you do put a trail camera out, leave it out for weeks at a time, you get that chip and you've got all sorts of entertainment for hours going through all the different photos. These are typically motion detected, and you probably hear my dog panting in the background, sorry. But these are motion detecting equipment. And so anytime an animal walks through, it's going to snap a photo or two or three. And if you look at the bottom of this particular screen, you can see there's a little black strip with some information on it. Most trail cameras give you information on the temperature, the moon, the day, the time, and you can actually give trail cameras different names. I get 2 trail cameras for Christmas every year. And so I got this one in 2018. And it's number 1 of the 2 that I got. But it can tell you a whole lot about when animals are out and about. So you've gone scouting, you know where you want to hunt. Let's talk a little bit about tree stands and blinds. We're going to start with tree stands. Once you've identified a route, you don't want to put your tree stand right on the route. You're going to get busted by the animal way too easily. They will smell you, they will see you, they will just know you're there. So instead, find the spot you want to hunt and put your tree stand a good 40 yards away. Find a route that's got...
Marie?
Yes?
Sorry. Oh, and by the way, everybody, before this started, Jean Marie told me it was okay to interrupt her anytime I wanted to. Right, Jean Marie?
Please.
Yeah. So David Lee wants to mention trail camera photo rate. I assume he's talking about your battery life expectancy and that sort of thing. If your cameras are going off too frequently, I assume.
Okay. Good point.
Do you mind if I cover it?
Please.
Just that I recently heard a Meat Eater podcast about it, and they were basically like, if you put a trail cam over a wide field and then put your trail the photo rate too high, too fast, you'll have 30,000 pictures of a doe in the field eating for, you know, a couple hours, and then you'll kill your battery. So, you know, you can set it for like an hour and a half if you want to get a look at a field every hour and a half or whatever. But if you do it on a trail, you can be more, you can, you know, you get like 10-second intervals between photos because that animal's traveling through, and you'll get a lot more pictures of different animals using that trail. That's all.
That's a great point. Thank you. What I have found with my cameras is I will set some for video. I will set some for 3-photo snapshot. And then to your point, David, tell it to 90 minutes or however long. That way I get a variety of things. And also with the video, I discovered I get sound. So then I had to go back and listen to 2,000 pictures or videos. But you do make a good point. As if you're working with cameras, think about how frequently you want photos to be taken. Thank you. Good point. So Brent, thanks for the interruption and for the good question. On the tree stands, if you're thinking about a place to put a tree stand, put a trail camera there for a few weeks and see what kind of action you get. Don't put your tree stand right on the trail that the animals travel. Again, you're going to get busted by the animals. Find something that's a tree, a healthy, straight tree that's 40 yards away if you're using a rifle. A good place is a spot that overlooks a pinch point or multiple intersections of trails, and make sure that your stand is high enough to be out of the scent cone. And I'll talk about scent cone here in just a minute. Because remember, these animals have evolved to elude hunters. And so think about where you want to be that they're not going to know you're there. So be a little ways off, be high enough that they're not going to smell you. On the next page that we looked at, tree stand in that tree with all the leaves, it's kind of hard to see. But you can see it's fairly high in the tree. And then the photo on the left is a pinch point where the deer, like I said earlier, deer are kind of lazy. If they have the option of walking around a tree that blocks part of a trail or going around it, they're going to go around it. And all, when you are in a tree stand, wear a well-fitted and a secured safety harness, please. It's just the smartest thing to do. So, I mentioned a couple seconds ago, make sure you are high enough to be out of the scent cone of an animal. Before this next page comes up, I'm going to make the caveat, I am not an artist. So Brent, if it comes up, let me know. Great. So here you are in your tree stand, safely harnessed to your tree, and you don't have on blaze because it's archery season. Modern gun hasn't started yet. And down below the tree, you've got the deer walking down the trail. There is a certain area of wind or breeze or scent that is very obvious to an animal. Yes, the wind is going to swirl. Yes, you may get busted anyway. But think about how high you can safely be in a tree so that even if a deer walks below you, it's not going to catch your scent. Now, there's a lot of science, there is a lot of art, there is a lot of rumor, there is a lot of myth around scent control. We're not going to go into that here particularly, but suffice it to say, be up high enough that you're not going to get busted by a deer or a barky dog, sorry, if they're walking under your tree stand. And again, always wear that safety harness. And once you have a tree stand up, as long as you're not hunting, if it's not season yet, and be sure you know what the laws are about having a tree stand on public land, but go sit out in that tree stand for half a day and see what you can see. The view from 20 feet up is very different from the view 5 feet up as an average person, or 5.5. So sit in that tree stand and see what walks by, see what you can see. So as you're thinking about tree stands, when the next image comes up, it has on the right side a tree with a tree stand in it. And this one's fairly visible and fairly exposed, but it has a good view of a field. Field has a pond in it. And so someone in this tree stand has a good 50 to 80 yard shot to the pond and around the field. And on this particular property has harvested more than one animal in this field. As the leaves fall, a hunter's motion is going to be more easily spotted, but with all the leaves down, if you take your time, move slowly, if you're patient, you can get that good ethical shot and have some success. And again, I'm going to say this every time, always wear a well-fitted and a secured safety harness when you're in a tree stand. When you're working in a tree stand, be harnessed in. So a little bit about tree stand location. As you're looking for locations for a tree stand, think about your shooting lanes. What's going to be 100, 200, 300 yards out from where you intend to shoot? One of the great things about shooting from a tree stand is you are going to be angled down, but you still need to think about what's beyond your target. Safe firearm handling, know what you're shooting at and what's on the other side. Are you right or left-handed? Because that may make a difference in where you place a tree in a tree stand. Is the spot you're thinking you're going to see your animal come through, is that going to be off to the right or off to the left? If you're hunting public land, are there other tree stands in the area? You don't want to be right on top of other hunters. Make sure if you're hunting public land or even private land, have your name and phone number on your stand. If you're hunting public land, make sure you know what the laws are around having stands or blinds up on public lands. So the image on this particular screen is a massive oak tree. There are always scads of acorns below this particular oak tree. Look for signs that deer have been there. They'll be eating the acorns. Squirrels do too, just keep that in mind. Look for another tree that's 30, 40 yards off. Put your tree stand there. So again, you're not right on top of the animals. They're not gonna bust you if they smell you. And think about what's going to be around there. Blinds, a lot of the same things that you say about tree stands, you're going to say about blinds. They shouldn't, again, be right on a trail. They might be able to be a little bit closer with the right planning, particularly for archery seasons. If you're leaving a blind out on public land, make sure you mark it with your name and a phone number and tie it down as securely as possible. Try to have it out weeks, days, preferably weeks prior to your hunt. That gives animals time to adjust to it. A brand new blind smells like plastic. This is gonna be a huge neon light for a deer because, face it, their noses are evolved to find anything unusual. So get it out there early if you can. A dose of wasp spray or permethrin. Again, always read the warnings on these things. Usually a good idea ahead of your hunt. And when you put your blind out, test your seat. Make sure you can see out the windows, see what the prevailing winds are going to be like in that particular area. Think about where the sun's going to come. You don't want to be backlit or highlighted in your blind when you have the windows open. If you test your seat, is it going to sink into the mud? If the ground is wet, you're going to be 3 inches too low to see anything. So think about where your tree stand is going to be, where your blind is going to be, and always, always think about safety.
I have a question about hunting from a blind.
Great.
So the inside of a blind is typically black, and let's assume that it's not modern firearm season and you're not wearing blaze orange anyway. What's your opinion about wearing camo inside a blind versus wearing, say, black inside a blind?
I wear camo because that's what I have to hunt in, and I have my layers already defined and warm. Unless your camo is very light, I don't think that would be an issue. There are some camo patterns that are designed for snow. Those are going to show some white and will probably be very obvious to an animal. If you wear black, you're probably going to be okay. As long as it's not modern gun, you don't have to have your blaze on. But remember that deer see colors differently than humans do. So they're just going to see muted blocks of color. Your camo breaks up those blocks a little bit. You're probably going to be just fine wearing black in a blind as long as it's not modern gun. If you can't get camo for whatever reason and you have an opportunity to go hunt, don't let that stop you. Go ahead and get out and enjoy it. The worst that happens is you get busted by an animal. They smell you, they see you, but chances are that's not going to happen. Great question. Thank you. The one thing I will say is even during archery season, if you don't have to have blaze on, put some blaze on top of your blind or something for the other hunters. Let them know you're there. Remember, deer see colors differently. If they see a blaze hat on top of a blind, all they're going to see is a block of brown. They're not going to see bright orange. So the bright blaze is out there for other hunters. Great question. Thank you. So what are next steps for you? You've been through this workshop. You're eager to go hunting. You've decided on a couple locations. Go scout. It's a bit of a time commitment, but hey, you've given up an hour of your night to listen to this, so you must be serious about this. After you go scout a second time. You'll be surprised how much more you remember each time you go back. Remember, if you misread something, if it's not really a rub, not really a scrape, that's okay. You're looking for the right things. Another big recommendation I would make is go talk to other hunters. Actually, don't talk to them. Listen to other hunters. Hunters love talking about what they do. And so get somebody started talking. You might get to hear a lot of hunting stories, but you can always glean something from them. If you know a hunter, ask them if you can go scouting with them. Ask them if you can go with them if they change out camera chips in their trail cameras. Offer to help them put up tree stands, because you will always learn something if you go out with a seasoned hunter. Keep in mind, when the rut hits and the hormones are running, animal behaviors will change. No matter how well you scouted where that buck's going to be in October, if the does are in a different field in November, he's going to be where the does are. So always keep that piece in mind, but a buck is going to keep a pretty similar route all year round. So you've all been through this same workshop. You've all heard me say the same things. How do you scout differently than the next hunter that's out there? Get up a little earlier than everybody else. Be willing to scout and hunt, by the way, when it's colder. When it's raining or snowing, weather patterns impact animal activity. So go scout when the weather's bad. Make an effort to get over that last steep hill to see what nobody else put the effort into finding. Follow the trail that doesn't look so well used out on a wildlife management area. Get to the hardest to get to spot on a property that you can possibly get to. And that's going to be the effort that the other hunters are not going to put in. So the property we used for the photos on this workshop, I have been using this property for the last 6 years. It has been blanketed with cameras at any given time. Last May, we put a camera out over this just monster of a hill that's horrible. And we hate hiking it. We forgot it was there actually. And we picked up that camera in September. And here's why I recommend you go where nobody else does. This beast has not been picked up on any other device on the property. And even if you're a new hunter, you can look at this photo and know that this guy is not young. He's been around for a while. And he's got this rack because he is over that last steep monster of a hill that nobody wants to go over. So think about it. When you're there, you're tired, don't do anything unsafe, but go that last, literally, extra half mile that nobody else is going to take. And you're going to have chances that nobody else is going to have. If you're a meat hunter, this guy's probably not going to be real tasty, by the way, because he's several years old. He's probably going to be a little bit chewy. But if you're looking for a rack, I'd love to find one this guy's dropped. This is what you're looking for. So that is everything that I have to share with you today. We've got a couple minutes left. Thank you very much for zooming in with us. Come join us for the Field to Fork, the Becoming an Outdoors Woman workshops. Men are allowed to join those, by the way. when the in-person events are allowed. They're so much fun. Follow up with Fish and Wildlife about your hunts, send updates, send pictures throughout the season. Brent loves to get those and share those with the other folks in Fish and Wildlife. The other instructors for these workshops love to get these. And please remember that the next workshop next weekend is on deer processing and cooking. So once you've got your deer, you need to know what to do with it. So go ahead, sign up for these. These workshops are a lot of fun for the instructors. I hope each of you has learned something new, and I hope I will get to hear that you've had some success out in the woods, that you've learned something, or that you just saw something really cool. But thanks for zooming in and joining us tonight.
Thank you, Jean Marie. That was fantastic. And yes, everybody, I shared, you've got that link to the other webinars a couple times at this point. You've got a couple emails from me with that link in it, as well as I shared the link in the chat too. So yes, definitely make sure you you sign up for the next webinars in the chat. Jean Marie, that was fantastic. You know, I watched this the other day when you did your practice run, but I was busy playing with all the features on Zoom and stuff, so I didn't get to focus as much as I wanted to. As always, though, learn something new. Really exciting. That question about the black in the blind actually came from Kentucky Field TV. I was watching, they had a Field to Fork one where they had 3 new hunters, and 2 of the 3 new hunters wearing black inside the blind. And I thought, huh, I wonder if that's a thing or if they were just wearing black because that's all they had. I wasn't sure. So
Yeah,
interesting. Very
but
interesting.
it makes sense.
So how much longer do we have you, Jean Marie?
I am here as long as you want me.
So folks, let's not take her entire evening, but anybody have any questions? I'm pulling up the chat now. Got some thank yous, lots of thank yous. Oh, a few thank yous on there. Anybody have any questions they want to throw at Jean Marie while we've got her? David Lee's your son have any questions?
He's a cutie.
Nobody? And you can either type it in or you can jump off mute. Oh, wait, here we go. CJ, how big of a factor are other predators to deer areas? Ooh, good one.
That's a good question. In Kentucky, we don't have a whole lot of serious predators for deer. Coyotes are the big thing. But I have coyotes on the property that I hunt that we used for this workshop, and the deer population is very healthy. They do take a toll on the fawns every spring, but the strong ones do make it, and the ones with the smart mamas make it, but they do predate the fawns. The older deer, going back to the question about trail cameras, I've actually got video of coyotes chasing a deer, and the deer could fairly easily outrun the coyotes. The other thing that I have learned, and I have not personally experienced this, but if you have a corn out and you're in southeastern Kentucky, the bears love it too. And once the bears move in, the deer tend to shy away. They're not going to go toe to toe with a black bear. So something to keep in mind if you're bear hunting, it might be one or the other. But the deer will be around all winter. The bear typically go hibernate even this far south. So bobcats, not going to be a significant impact to a deer, I don't think. So humans, coyotes, and bear are going to be the predators that they need to watch out for. Did that answer the question? Hopefully.
Very good. I'll get a few in here. Oops, getting away from me. Hang on, let's see. Oh. Where'd it go? When's a good time of year to look for shed antlers?
Oh,
that's fine.
Bucks start shedding their antlers typically in February, March. And so if you're looking for a good reason to be out in the woods in February, March, April timeframe, that's a good time frame to go shed hunting. That's another time when it's nice to know where those deer trails are, because the antlers don't usually fall off without something bumping them, or they frequently fall off when something does bump them, maybe a better way to say that. And so if you know what their trails are, that's the best place to hunt. There are actually dogs that are trained to shed hunt. And the reason that the woods are not absolutely chock full of shed antlers is because the rodents use them for calcium and they'll chew on them and eat them. And so if you're going shed hunting, I'd recommend February, March, April. You'll always have a chance of finding one any time of year, but that's the best time. Good question.
Shed hunting is a fantastic way to get yourself familiarized with the new property as well. So if you're thinking about going, say, hunting on public property and you've never been on that WMA before, go shed hunting. And then by the fall, you'll probably be fairly familiar with it. Another question, what is the normal radius of a buck that you see on your wildlife cameras? I'm assuming that means how far do the bucks move typically? I think that's what,
so
I assume that's what it is.
I don't know how big a buck's range is. On the cameras that I have, I usually see them on a 30-acre area. On the property that I hunt is about 70 acres. And usually the guys who are up front are not the guys that are in the back. But I don't know where they go on other property, that this particular one's bounded by other lands. So I don't know the answer to how big a buck's range is. I'm sorry. Does anybody Fish and Wildlife know?
It varies from time of year. During the rut, that range is way bigger than the normal time of year. And somebody like that big one you saw way back on the backside of your property, you know, they don't get that big because they're real brazen and willing to pick fights and run around and all that sort of stuff. They get that big because they're terrified of everything. And so theirs are going to be a little bit smaller. And of course, just like with any wildlife species, juxtaposition to resources is going to affect that as well. So if you've got an area with lots of food and lots of cover and lots of water, that area is going to be much smaller. Whereas if you have sort of a barren landscape, the deer has to move a lot further to find what they need. So yeah, it just depends. Your does are going to have a more consistent range throughout the year than bucks, because bucks really come rut, they start to move big time.
Thank you, Brent.
You're welcome. Yes, David Lee, and yes, they need food, they need water, they need shelter, and at a certain point, just like Jean Marie said at the beginning, they need to make babies, so they got to have the does in the area too. Yeah. Let's see. There was a good one in here, and now I've lost it. Some more thank yous. Oh, this is a good one. Yes, when does rut start in Kentucky, in central Kentucky? But we'll go statewide.
In the areas that I see, it's usually late November, which is why modern gun season is in late November. Some years it starts earlier, some years it starts later. I don't know that there is a hard and fast date for that, but late November tends to be when it's at its peak. And if you've ever been in a tree stand and seen a buck chasing a doe full speed, first of all, you know you're not going to get a shot at him because they are out and gone in about 8 seconds. But if you hear people talk about the bucks chasing the does, that's primarily going to be in late November. There is a secondary rut, I think in January. If there are does that haven't been bred, they may go back into estrus. But the peak of the rut tends to be late November.
Very good. And we are in we're at the very beginning, or right at the beginning of what would be considered pre-rut right now. So you're starting to see some of those more aggressive rutting behaviors out of the deer. And so you might see a lot more movement out of deer right now. Not quite as much as you will for the peak of rut, but we're getting into a really exciting time. So
during the summer, the bucks will basically herd together in bachelor herds. But as the rut comes closer, they stop being friends. And that's when you'll hear the rattling when they're fighting each other and they're deciding who gets what turf, is as the rut comes a little bit closer. But those bachelor herds, there was a picture in the presentation, 2 bucks with nice big racks hanging out together. That was a group of about 4, actually, different levels of racks. But come late November, they're not going to be friends anymore.
Another good one, when are fawns able to fend for themselves?
I don't know the answer to that. What I can tell you is that I have seen, even as late as November hunting season, I have seen fawns still feeding from their mothers. So I've decided if I see a doe with a youngster with her, I'm not taking the doe. But I don't know exactly when a fawn becomes self-sufficient. Brother David, do either of you know that?
Most of the fawns in the state of Kentucky are going to be able to fend for themselves as early as September, or even a little earlier. In fact, you'll see button bucks in those bachelor herds you were talking about as early as September. In fact, that's sort of part of the reason why the um, archery season doesn't start any earlier than September. You'll get some people that want to see an earlier archery season because they want a better chance of getting a buck in velvet. But if you go too much earlier than that, then you start to run more of a chance of separating a doe from her fawns. Some does, though, they don't get bred till or have a problem with the first breeding and they have to get bred again. And so they have a fawn much later in the year. And so some of them will be sticking around with mom later on in the year. Doesn't necessarily mean that they can't be weaned if need be. You know, some of these ones we see in November, you know, if you were to take that doe, odds are the fawn would be fine. She just hasn't weaned that one yet for whatever reason. Good question. Good answer.
Yeah.
Wow. A good rule of thumb, decent rule of thumb is, you know, if the spots are fading, it's probably okay to go ahead, you know. Although you do get that weird anomaly. My very first deer was all by itself. It was a button buck, and it had this really, I couldn't, you know, my heart was beating a million miles an hour. I didn't know what was going on, but it had these really faint spots on it in modern firearm season, and our deer biologist said, yeah, that's an anomaly. Didn't mean it's young. It's just, you know, it happens every once in a while. Good question.
Yeah.
Good. I think that's the last of the ones we've got. Yes, in the comments, and some more thank yous. Jean-Marie.
Thank you for giving up your Thursday evening and dialing in.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around.
Yeah, great crowd. Appreciate that. Hope to see you in the field and hope to, cute baby, sorry. And hope to hear about your success stories. See you at another workshop or a bow event. But come on out and enjoy the workshops. Fish and Wildlife has some other programs that are absolutely great. So I hope to see you at one of those as well.
Thank you again, Jean-Marie, and thank you, everybody. Remember, this has been recorded, so I will, I'll get in and I'll try to edit out the parts where I talk too much or you know, all the dead air we had at the very beginning, like 30 minutes of dead air before we actually officially started the program, that sort of thing. I'll get in and I'll edit that stuff out. So to take, I'm getting faster and faster all the time, but it may be up to a couple weeks before you guys get that. I will tomorrow. I'm going to go through the video, look to see who all was here, and send you guys a post-program survey. So please take the time to fill that out. It helps us make these things better for people in the future. And thank you again. Thank you, Jean-Marie. Thank you, everybody. Everybody have a great, what day is today? Thursday evening, coming up on the weekend. It is Friday Eve. Get out and enjoy yourselves. Get out in the woods.
Get out in the woods. Turkey season Saturday.
Whoop, whoop.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.